Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to another great day of quality improvement program. So let's start our first session for the day. As the chairperson for this session, we have Dr. Deepali Bansode ma'am, Associate Professor, Department of Pharmaceutical Chemistry, Pune College of Pharmacy, Bharati Vidyapeeth Team to be University. Ma'am has pursued her post-graduation and PhD from Bharati Vidyapeeth, Pune College of Pharmacy. She has more than 20 years of research experience and has received LM Khurana Best Paper Award in Indian Journal of Pharmaceutical Sciences Award Ceremony in Hyderabad 57th IPC and PD Sethi Best Paper Award in Indian Journal of Pharmaceutical Research and Award Ceremony in Hyderabad APTI Convention 2008. I request ma'am to introduce the speaker for this session.
Thank you, Jilu, for the introduction. Good morning, one and all. On behalf of Bharati Vidyapeeth Deemed University, I would like to welcome all the delegates and our resource person, Dr. Medha Madam, for the first session of Day 4 QIP program. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Medha Bargaje Madam, Professor, Department of Pulmonary Medicine, Bharati Medical College, Pune, and a renowned pulmonologist in Pune. Madam had completed her MBBS and MD from BJ Medical College, Pune, and is associated with Bharati Vidyapeeth family since last 2 decades. To her credit, she had published more than 20 research articles in various reputed journals and had fetched grants from various organizations worth rupees 50 lakhs. Madam is actively involved in research and her areas of interest are whole genome sequencing of Mycobacterium tuberculosis and evaluation of novel diagnostic kit for detection of TB in patient with pulmonary disorder. With this brief note, I request Madam to enlighten us with her talk on drug-related problems in COVID patients. Please, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, ma'am.
Just give me 1 minute. Okay, am I audible and are the slides visible
Yes,
to
ma'am.
everyone? Okay, can we start?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So today's topic given to me is drug-related problems in COVID patients. Uh, the references I'm using are from the Indian website, that is Clinical Management Protocol, and on COVID-19 plus clinical guidance on diabetes management at COVID-19 patient management facility, which are available on our health ministry website. So if we want to discuss theory, what do we mean by COVID pandemic? We know the thing started in China last December. Subsequently, in January, it was declared as a public health emergency. Then in March, WHO declared it as a pandemic. In India, we started getting uh, the about started hearing about this pandemic in January. The first case was reported on 13 Jan 2020. This is, like I said, that slide was showing you theory. But for all citizens of India, what the pandemic meant, it meant lockdown. March onwards, It meant nationwide lockdown. So, frankly, at least in Pune, I have never seen roads this empty. And frankly, being a person working in COVID facility in Pune, I used to drive every day on these empty roads. And frankly, let me tell you, it was scary. And we really wanted that Corona to go, but uh, it took long time for health workers. What this pandemic meant. The pandemic meant something which we never seen before. Even during H1N1, we sort of experienced that pandemic for maybe few months. But during Corona, last 5 6 months, the pandemic means always coming to hospital, getting in that PPE kit, which was quite difficult, let me tell you, and staying in that PPE kit for long hours, especially for critical people. The pandemic meant PPE kit. The pandemic meant something like new drugs, which we have never used before, maybe like remdesivir, maybe like tocilizumab. For the first time, patient and doctor were hearing these names in their life, and first time patient receiving these drugs, first time doctor using these drugs, first time health workers giving these drugs. So we have seen many new names, many new drugs. So if you ask me, COVID related problems we faced during last 7 8 months, definitely I would start with drugs. What was the first problem I would say when I say drug related problems? What to use during this pandemic? Because frankly, the virus was new to us. So if at all we have to treat the patient, we had to get the drugs. So the first question or first problem we face, what to use? Slowly we started going through whatever was available. So if I have to divide the drugs available to us for treatment of COVID patient, I would say maybe I use some drugs which were known to me. So in that group, maybe I would put hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, doxycycline, ivermectin, steroids. At the same time, we had many new drugs like I've shown you in last slide, something like remdesivir or tocilizumab or Fabiflu. So the first problem we face as far as drugs are concerned, what to use? Because nobody knew how to treat this new virus. And why was this problematic? Because all these years, 90s and 20s, we as a clinician, as a health worker, we always were used to treat bacterial infections with some drugs. So even when we were taught or as a teachers we started teaching, we used to say viral को क्या करना है? Viral को बस you have to hydrate, you have to do give B complex, you have to take rest, you have to give vitamin C, and really for all these years we always were comfortable treating bacterial infections. But as far as viral infections, we just had few symptomatic options and we always thought कि virus तो अपने आप चला जाता है. If you all must be aware कि if you treat common cold, it goes away in a week. If you don't treat, it will go in away in 7 days. So that was the general perception of all the medical fraternity regarding treatment of virus. If we go back, when actually we started treating virus, maybe uh, when H1N1 came, so we realized as a doctor कि yes, there is something like oseltamivir which needs to be prescribed and which needs to be used. So subsequently, the guidelines say it is not that effective. If you use in early in first 24 hours, it's okay. Otherwise, again we went back to our general symptomatic treatment. Only condition where really some investigation, some monitoring, uh, and some drugs were used is I think HIV, ART, where maybe viral cultures, viral load, sensitivity, drug regimens like we are using in tuberculosis were thought of, were discussed, and were put in practice. Otherwise, overall viral infection, we always thought it is something as a topic for option. But somehow this time the virus said no. Let me teach them something. They should not be put this topic virus infections as a option. And so this time first time we realized, we need to discuss about the management of viral infections. So like I said, first problem, drug related problem we all face was what to use to treat this viral disease. So I'll just go through the pathophysiology in 1 minute. When we came to pathophysiology, obviously, like I said, no, were not experiencing treating viral diseases. So when we studied the pathophysiology of COVID, the first thing everybody realized about COVID or virus is it is not the virus which is causing problem, but it is our own immunity which is giving or putting us in trouble, which is causing complications, which we called cytokine storm. So typically, patient will get infection, develop the disease. Most of the people will recover, experience something like common cold, but few people, especially those with comorbidities, between 7th and 12th day will develop something called cytokine storm. Means what? Literally, the body's immunity will become so aggressive that instead of controlling the virus, the immunity itself becomes uncontrolled and starts manifesting in various organs like one ARDS in lungs, which was the commonest thing we have seen. So typical clinical features, patient desaturates and requires oxygen support. So frankly, if someone asked me what was the first drug used, that was oxygen, because patient presented commonly commonly with respiratory complaints. The lungs were flooded with this exudate. The fight between body's own immunity, body's cells, lung, causing ARDS, causing desaturation, hypoxia. So the first drug which everybody realized would help the patient was oxygen. The second problem in pathophysiology was because many patients, even if we were giving oxygen, we realized there are some other manifestations like neurological or cardiac. And then we notice there is something known as thromboembolism going on in this vascular compartment. So that is how we started using anticoagulation. And the fact that the immunity was very aggressive, we tried to suppress the immunity, and that is how the third thing we started using steroids. So if we go through the pathophysiology, frankly, no physician will take objection during this COVID thing regarding use of oxygen, anticoagulation, and steroids. The rest of the things, like I said, hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, doxycycline, ivermectin, all this you will have discussions, controversies, arguments, counter arguments, even regarding these new things, remdesivir, tocilizumab, or even plasma therapy. Clinicians will have their arguments, but as far as oxygen, anticoagulants, and steroids are concerned, nobody will take objection because they seem to be logical if you go through the pathophysiology. So, the first problem, like I said, the drugs we use in COVID, the first thing we faced was what to use. So, to some extent, we sorted out or we found solution by thinking over it. Then the next thing was when to use and how to use. So, when we said drug related problems, first, like I discussed, what to use. To some extent, we found out solution for that. Now, the second question was how and when to use. If you go through those management protocols, there were problems like because, frankly, oxygen, anticoagulation, steroid. If I say oxygen, it was not freely available, and what was freely available was not enough for the patient. Okay, I'm repeating my statement. If you see the nursing homes, government hospitals, uh, medical college hospitals, or PMC, if we are discussing about Pune Municipal Corporation, PMC hospitals, the first thing we used as a drug was oxygen, and it was not freely available. Somebody might say, Madam, it is available freely in atmosphere, but that was not enough for that lung which was having ARDS. So the first problem was, fine, I want to use, but when to start and how to start? Because till then, neither general public nor GPs or medical officers were very friendly with something known as pulse ox. Assessing the patient for saturation was not common before COVID era. Now during COVID, literally everyone knows about pulse ox. Even you go to any hotel, restaurant, you go any shop, the watchman standing there will be taking your temperature with that laser gun, and assessing your saturation. So the second problem, like I said, when to and how to give oxygen. So there slowly we learn that yes, if oxygen saturation goes below 95, then that is the alarm sign. Above 95, that means these are the patients who can be home quarantine or can be monitored in a ward where oxygen facility may not be available. But the moment O2 saturation in the patient goes below 95, these are the patients who are going to need oxygen. So they need ward with oxygen facility, or subsequently, if they go in cytokine storm and need more oxygen support, apart from that just mask, they need critical facility. So when I say management of this patient, investigations, so my investigation, because when we say investigation, we always have something in mind like maybe radiology or lab. But let me tell you, the most important factor in last investigation in last 7 8 months was finding out oxygen saturation in my patient, so that we can decide when to start oxygen, and depending on saturation, how much to give. Then came the investigations about radiology and blood. I'll just again spend 1 minute on this. Radiology, X-ray, and scan were important to tell me which drugs to start and when to start. Whatever we have seen in last slides, steroids, anticoagulants. So depending on radiology and inflammatory markers, because like I said, ARDS is the common presentation we have seen. So to find out, to diagnose it, we needed radiology, chest x-ray, and in some patients, obviously CT scan to find out severity, because x-ray is something two-dimensional thing, investigation, scan is three-dimensional. So scan gives me better idea about the extent involvement of the lung. And then there is something like inflammatory markers. So when I said pathophysiology, I said ARDS, and second thing I said thromboembolism. So to find out about this cytokine storm of thromboembolism, the common investigations we have used D-dimer, which tells me about the possibility of thromboembolism. CRP, that is C-reactive protein, again tells me about the inflammation. Procalcitonin, Procal. Now always remember, the second drug I said anticoagulation, and third drug I said steroid. So when I'm going to use these drugs, fine, I start with X-ray, I see ARDS. So I know cytokine storm is there. The immunity is very aggressive. To suppress that, I have to use steroids. If D-dimer is raised, I know there is possibility of thromboembolism. I start with anticoagulation. But always remember, when I'm using steroids in higher doses, there is problem of superadded infection. So how do I find out about that? To some extent, depending on patient's clinical features, the second thing is procalcitonin. So that particular investigation will tell me whether patient is likely to have bacterial infection. So if I go through management after investigations, I'll repeat radiology, inflammatory markers. Along with that, definitely, because whatever drugs I'm using, I have to find out baseline. So I'll be going for renal function, liver function, diabetes, hemogram, urine routine to get general idea about patient's comorbidities. So after doing investigations, if I go for treatment, what the protocol says. Like I said, if my patient is asymptomatic, many patients were, like suppose tomorrow a fellow comes to flu OPD with fever, I do RT-PCR, I find that patient RT-PCR is positive. Subsequently, I do this test in rest of the family also. So then I may find one patient who is symptomatic. But at the same time, there may be 3 or 4 relatives. Because of screening, I've done testing in them. They have come positive, but they are totally asymptomatic. So in treatment part, always remember the protocol says symptomatic treatment. So those who are completely asymptomatic may not require anything. Next thing, in all patients, I have to ensure adequate hydration. Then the third thing will be oxygen support. So like I said, I'm going to find out about saturation, and based on that saturation, I'm going to give oxygen support. Then the fourth thing, depending on inflammatory markers, I will start with anticoagulation. And the fifth thing, corticosteroids. Again, if you see this thing, the first 5 points, I haven't written about ASI, I haven't written about remdesivir. I'm repeating, if you see these 5 points of treatment, they haven't mentioned about ASI, doxy, ivermectin. They haven't mentioned about remdesivir or tocilizumab. And that's why maximum patients will be recovering with this line of management. Maximum patients, I'm saying. So if I've got a ward of, let us say, 100 patients, most of the times 30-35 will require only first 2 modalities. Another, out of that 100, 30 to 40 will require first 4 modalities. And 30, 30, 40, so it comes to 60 to 70. Remaining 30 patients where you're going to face problem based on comorbidities and based on severity of disease. I know I haven't discussed many things about RT-PCR, but I hope by this time everybody knows about RT-PCR. So in case anybody wants to know more about the diagnostic test, because that is not the topic for my lecture, so I'm not discussing in detail. I hope already you know how we diagnose COVID. In case you have got any queries, after the lecture is over, we will discuss. So depending on patient's condition, I keep on adding these modalities. First, symptomatic. Second, adequate hydration. In case my patient is desaturating, I keep on go on giving oxygen support, anticoagulation, corticosteroids. Like I said, out of 100, 60-70% this is enough. But Remaining 30 patients, they are having some or the other comorbidities. So here, first 2 to 3 months, we strongly supported use of hydroxychloroquine. After, let us say, June or July, we stopped using hydroxychloroquine altogether in our COVID center, except as a prophylaxis. The other things, plasma, convalescent plasma, again, not very useful. We have used in some of the patients. What the protocol says about other things? 7 point, control of comorbid conditions. So, like I said, in investigation, we need to find out what are the comorbidities and we need to treat that. And 8 point, here the protocol says investigational therapies like tocilizumab. So, whatever last few months we have used these new drugs, we will discuss some of the cases and we'll find out how these different investigation treatment modalities came out with some complicated situations for us, and it was really tricky working in that COVID ward and finding solutions for this. So I'm going to take 1 minute gap. I want you to go through the slides I have explained to you, and in case you have got any questions, you can ask, and then we'll proceed with case discussion, because that is the thing I want to do, because otherwise you won't understand what all drug related problems we face. Otherwise it becomes theory. So I'm giving you 1 minute. Go through the slides I have explained to you. If at all you want any, ask any questions based on those slides, I think Manjusha, we can allow that.
Yes, ma'am, I'll do that.
Yeah. So anybody has any questions on what on slides I have explained?
The participants can unmute themselves. I have allowed it.
No, ma'am.
Okay, so we will go with the case one. This patient actually, in our COVID center, we had 2 ICUs, 2 wards with high flow oxygen facility, 1 ward where we had facility for high dependency unit, facility for cases with mild disease, and facility for oxygen therapy for moderate cases. So this patient was admitted in ward where oxygen facility was available. 55-year-old female. She came with cough, breathlessness, and fever. RT-PCR was done, which was positive. In our flu OPD, we had facility of RT-PCR, and subsequently from July onwards, we had facility of rapid antigen testing also. This case was RT-PCR positive. So admitted in the ward, she required 4 to 6 liters of oxygen. In ward, we had facility for nasal oxygen with nasal mask, nasal prongs, and something like rebreathing mask. So if you're giving oxygen, the first step is you use nasal prongs or mask. The second thing is a rebreathing mask. So when we are using rebreathing mask, that means patient's oxygen requirement is more. And if patient cannot maintain on that breathing mask, then maybe we have to shift the patient to high dependency unit. So this patient was in ward, maintaining saturation between 90 to 94. So our protocol was between 90 to 95 patient will be managed in the ward. We did all the investigations, like I've told you, inflammatory markers, routine investigations like hemogram, LFT, RFT, everything was normal. CT was done. Now, let me explain you. When we do scan during this COVID period, we give score. So the whole lung is considered as 25. Then based on percentage of lobe involvement, we calculate the score. So if the whole lung is involved, it will be 25. This patient had 19 out of 25. So that much lung was involved. So now treatment part. So like she was desaturating, her D dimer was high. So we started her on steroids, heparin, vitamin C, Vicozin, PAN, that is antacid, pantoprazole, and we monitored her. That time, our protocol was if the score was 19, so more than 10, and patient is requiring oxygen, as per our hospital's protocol and government protocol, we could give remdesivir. The protocol for ward patients was 5 days of remdesivir. Before giving remdesivir, we had to make sure that patient is having normal kidney function and liver function. Now, during COVID, we have seen many patients were diagnosed with diabetes first time in their life during COVID era or COVID hospitalization. The one reason could be use of steroids, and second reason we found out that COVID, the different manifestations of COVID, we have one of it is on endocrine system. So patient may get diabetic, or patient may have thyroid problem. So this metabolic problems or endocrine problems are common in COVID patients. The virus is affecting pancreas and thyroid. So now here the drug related problems we were facing. One, D dimer high. So we were giving anticoagulants. 19 score pretty high, desaturating. So we had to give high dose steroids, that is methylprednisolone. And based on this and government guidelines, we started with remdesivir. Now my problems after this treatment. After 5 days of remdesivir, because dose schedule at that point of time in July, August was like 5 dosage of remdesivir. So after 5 days, she is still having fever. Still, her saturation is not going above 92, occasionally 94. Her CBC, which was initially 8,000, now going above 10,000. So what exactly I should be doing in this scenario? I have completed 5 days of remdesivir. That was the guideline. Patient still having fever. Saturation is not going above 92. WBC count slowly rising. So based on this, see, now when I'm working in ward, my problems are whether I should be going for something new like tocilizumab, whether I should be going for plasma therapy, which was not common in July, August actually. After that, it became quite common. But again, plasma is not answer for this thing. It is going to be a temporary thing. So, what should be my next step? So, first thing, maybe she is going in cytokine storm. Second thing, because I have used steroids, she is having superadded infection because the WBC count was also going high. Now, how do I differentiate between these two? Whether my patient is not recovering from COVID and going in cytokine storm, or because of my steroid use, patient is having superadded infection, or whether both are there. Because my problem is, if only infection I'm suspecting, maybe I just give antibiotic and observe the patient. But if on the other hand, patient is going in cytokine storm, then maybe I have to think of something like tocilizumab. Now here, the real, you can say, exam starts for the clinician, because if I have to use tocilizumab, I have to rule out all the infections. If I want to use tocilizumab, first thing I have to do is rule out additional infections, because tocilizumab is known to cause immunosuppression. So how do I proceed in this case? It was a bit difficult. So what we did at that point of time, we went for IL-6, interleukin 6, which was between 30 to 40. So we continued remdesivir for another 5 days. So total, the patient received 10 days of remdesivir. We could do that because her LFT, RFT were normal. At the same time, we started her on colchicine. We found out that colchicine also helps to reduce the inflammation. And because the WBC count was going high, we added ceftriaxone. After 10 doses of remdesivir, her saturation was not dropping, but she was still requiring oxygen. But slowly we found out that oxygen requirement is going down. Her X-ray is improving. Her WBC count started dropping. So most probably I'm saying she needed all three things. And we could discharge her after 2 months because though after remdesivir 10 days, the rest of the 30-40 days, she still required oxygen. So we slowly tapered off steroids, anticoagulants, and at the end of 2 months, without requiring critical care unit, she went home. And now, after 3 months, we repeated her scan, which is showing improvement. Her CT score has dropped to 10. Her diffusion study will be done after 1 month. As of now, she has been started on pulmonary rehab. So in this case, the drug-related problems were we had to give her steroids. And the commonest problem we face with steroids is blood sugar derangement, chances of superadded infection. Again, that deranged blood sugar, diabetes can make the patient prone to get infection. So our problem in many of these patients was we had to use steroids in high dosage for a prolonged time till the inflammatory markers came down to normal. But along with then this overuse of steroids, we face the problem of diabetic complications and superadded infections. So going to next case, this is 30-year-old female. We admitted her because we couldn't home quarantine her. Home isolation was not possible because basic requirement of home isolation was there has to be some caretaker. So we admitted her. At that point of time, we were using Fabiflu for patients who were either having mild cases, home isolated, or just admitted for observation. Now, here the patient came to us 8 days after diagnosis. She was taking treatment from outside practitioner who started her on Fabiflu. Now, what were my problems? When she came, I realized the Fabiflu dose is not correct. Frankly, all these drugs were new. Nobody knew the regimen, how to give, what investigations to do. So it was a bit problematic. The dose was quite high. If you really think in uh, terms of milligram, the stat dose was 1800 milligram. And what tablets we got? 200 milligram strength. So one tablet of 200 milligram. That means patient had to swallow 9 tablets if I want to give the stat dose. And afterwards, we used to give 800 milligram BD. Now, obviously, that point of time, people were not comfortable giving something like 1800 of something new for 7 or 14 days. So she was started on half the dose outside. Because it was used in mild cases, many clinicians were under impression, fine, we need not do any investigations. So frankly, the practitioner who started Fabiflu never did any investigations before starting Fabiflu. So in our ward, we had this system thanks to actually clinical pharmacy. The clinical pharmacist takes round and he keeps on looking for correct dose, monitoring for ADR. And that is how we came out with proper tables telling our all the clinicians about side effect, dose, and monitoring test. So frankly, this lady has taken Fabiflu without any monitoring, without any investigations for 5 6 days. Subsequently, when she realized that no, she should be in hospital, and the practitioner also realized for home isolation there has to be caretaker because see during that pandemic the guidelines used to come. So many times you used to start treating patient, then the guideline used to come, and then you should used to realize, कि fine, no, this is not the way things are done. Maybe I need to change or modify something. So that is how she came to our ward after 8 or 10 days. Now, if I look at my table of that Fabiflu side effects and investigations, what all things I need to do? The first thing I need to do ECG because it has got cardiac ADR. So these are the common problems because like I said now, when people say Fabiflu can be used in mild cases, many think it can be just prescribed without any testing. But if you go and see the side effects of ADR, the first thing is something related to heart. I need to do ECG. The second thing is all this, whether remdesivir or Fabiflu, we have seen electric derangement. So we have to do baseline liver function test. Obviously, the creatinine clearance has to be correct or the renal function test they have to be correct for me to start these drugs. And one additional problem with Fabiflu was hyperuricemia. That means I need to monitor uric acid also. So because of, like I said, the the suddenness of that pandemic lockdown, what we had to look for is some guidelines. There were never training sessions for all health personnel. Routine course, we something like this happens routinely. Maybe the government will have training sessions, but this time during this COVID pandemic, we never had time for any training sessions. So government just used to upload the guidelines. And that is how, like I said, lack of awareness, panic, lack of awareness. So this patient, my problem was patient came on half dose. Instead of 800 milligram BD, she was on 400 milligram BD. She was happy anyway. She had mild uh, disease. So then I have to do LFT, RFT, and then I said, now I'll go to proper dose. I explained to her. Luckily, during COVID area, we could explain to the patient this is something new. We are the health system, medical profession. We really don't know what all drugs to use. So patient used to understand. So I said, fine. Now I have to increase the dose. The moment I increased the dose, she started getting palpitations. So all these days, now my problem was all these days she had mild disease. She was happy with whatever she was receiving. If I have to follow proper guidelines, I can't give her 400 milligram BD. I had to give her 800 milligram BD, based on which, when the dose started, she started getting palpitations. She said, "Nee, I'm feeling weird. I'm not feeling normal." Now, here my problem was whether I should be giving Fabiflu, give rest of the whatever 7 8 days because the dose is 7 to 14 days, or should stop. Now she was admitted in my ward because she didn't have anybody at home to look after her. So that means she was in a ward where there were patients who were on steroids, on various regimens. So I so I had this thing. Either I should complete the Fabiflu 14 days, or I explain her everything and I stop. I couldn't discharge her because that time the quarantine period was 17 days. So I had to keep her for less of 4 5 days in hospital. So I explained to her everything. I said, see, you're getting ADR because of these things. I can't give you half dose. So I will stop Fabiflu. I will observe you. Only 4 5 days are remaining. And afterwards, we'll repeat inflammatory markers and then we'll discharge you. Luckily, the lady accepted that. She understood that. We stopped Fabiflu, continued with B complex and symptomatic treatment, and discharged her when her 17 days were over. Case 3, 18-year-old female. She had past history of diabetes, had past history of hypertension, had past history of psychiatric problems. She was admitted when in Pune we had highest number of cases in September. Frankly, the scenario was in flu patient used to come with RT-PCR report, get admitted. When we used to see the patient may have reports, may not have reports. If patient is educated enough, he would tell us about all the drugs and past history. Otherwise, there was really chaos. Why? Because frankly, the relatives used to be available on phone. Patient used to be in COVID ward. When first I went to see this lady, because of her age and her psychiatric problems, frankly, she couldn't give me any history. As per our protocol, she was desaturated, so she was put on oxygen. She was put on anticoagulants. She received her remdesivir. Her LFT RFTs were normal. but she was disoriented. So we started investigating. The first, obviously, here we have said diabetes. So we were thinking whether now this is related to diabetic complication. Her blood sugars were normal. Neither she was going in hypoglycemia, nor she was having diabetic ketoacidosis. So now this disorientation problem, how do we solve it? Electrolytes were normal. Second, she had history of hypertension, but again the blood pressure was normal. So now comes the problem of psychiatric thing. So on phone we found out about her treatment, but when we consulted the psychiatrist, he said in present scenario, don't give her any drugs as far as her psychiatric problem is concerned. So now I thought, okay, fine, she is on oxygen, she has received remdesivir, a bit disoriented, could be because of her age, could be because of her psychiatric problem. We ruled out in ward the diabetic problem, like maybe hypoglycemia or ketoacidosis. Hypertension, she was at that point of time, her blood pressure was okay. So I decided, fine, now let me go ahead with CT scan. Because again, same, she was on steroids. So I didn't know what could be the reason for her bit of disorientation. We did CT, we found that on CT, thorax and CT brain, we did both. CT brain was normal, but CT thorax showed cavity with fungal bond. So now my problem is I'm giving her steroids. She is on anticoagulants. She has received remdesivir. I have done scan, CT thorax, which shows cavity with fungus bone. So now this information means whether she has got past history of tuberculosis. So again, we have to go back to her relatives and find out. They said no. As far as TB is concerned, there is no past history. But again, in 80-year-old patient, the problem is the relatives around, maybe son or daughters, they may not have information in her early life of that patient, like maybe in her 20s if she has got something. And obviously, her parents are not available to interview. So, frankly, we are back to square one. We don't know about TB part. But now that cavity was with fungal ball. So, what we did was obviously we said we'll do sputum AP smear, sputum gene expert. Luckily, both were negative. But counseling that patient for sputum examination was really tricky. 80-year-old female in COVID ward, but we could do it. Luckily, the sputum was negative. Now, regarding fungus ball, now whenever patient comes with cavity, the commonest problem is hemoptysis. On the top of that, she had fungal ball. So definitely there was chance of hemoptysis. Now, whom to tell to monitor? Because frankly, the 80-year lady, we were not sure will come out with the history of hemoptysis. So then in that ward, we told patients around her to monitor her for hemoptysis. And as far as the treatment was concerned, we tried to taper off steroids. It was difficult because she was requiring oxygen, but we knew if we keep on giving more and more steroids, she may have reactivation of tuberculosis or more disseminated fungal disease. So we started her on antifungal also. At the same time, we started with antibiotic and we started tapering off the steroids. This lady also went back home after 1 month, walking without oxygen. So we could avoid steroid related problems in her. We could monitor, we could maintain her blood sugar, we could maintain her BP, and we could taper off her steroids. Case 4, only one more case is remaining. This patient was doctor, 70-year-old male. Uh, I would like to tell a bit about this patient even before he got admitted. How was the behavior of doctors or healthcare workers during that period? Frankly, we had sessions for our faculty for proper social distancing, sanitization, hand washing, use of masks. But there were few people who used to think, Is it really necessary to have mask all the time over your face, nose and mouth?" Frankly, people used to have mask around their neck most of the times, and coughing, sneezing. So we had to reinforce regarding this guidelines many times. And this particular patient, like I said, who is practitioner, he used to think, fine, I mean, maybe I've been exposed to so many viral in my lifetime, so I'm not going to get this infection. So everybody used to tell him, fine, sir, you are supposed to wear mask. He used to say, fine, I'll wear, but I don't think I'm going to get anything. If I don't get anything, I don't think I'm going to spread to you anything. Unfortunately, this fellow got COVID. That time also, he said, fine, it could be my disease. So he remained home. The panic started when he started feeling breathless. His saturation went down to 88. That was the first time he realized this is not something mild. So came to hospital, got admitted. Now our problems were when we took the past history. This patient had history of angioplasty in the past. He was hypertensive. Luckily, neither he was giving past history of diabetes nor on admission the blood sugars were deranged. But he has got old pulmonary TB history. He had pleural effusion in the past, because of which there was pleural thickening and one of the diaphragm had gone up. So already the cardiorespiratory system was, let us say, weak, or bit on negative side. Angioplasty was done. So obviously you can't say he was cardiac wise very healthy. He had pleural effusion in past for which tapping was done, but there was severe pleural thickening. The left diaphragm had gone up to mid zone. That means even respiratory wise he was not normal. And now he got admitted with desaturation of 88. Now problem was we started on routine things, steroids, anticoagulants. He was already on ecosprin and clopidogrel because of his post-angioplasty status. So along with cardiologist opinion, we upgraded the anticoagulants. We started with steroids, but here the problem was there was past history of pulmonary TB. So we're always on fence whether to give more steroids to suppress his cytokine storm, but clearly he was going in cytokine storm. His oxygen requirement was going up, so we had to give more and more steroids. At the same time, we had to keep on monitoring or observing. There should not be reactivation of his tuberculosis. During his hospitalization, he received remdesivir 10 days. Because of his increase in oxygen requirement, we couldn't monitor or manage him in the ward. So he was transferred to critical care where he was given high flow oxygen on which he felt better and could maintain his oxygen. Though in our hospital's protocol, we were not using commonly plasma, but this patient insisted. So we given him plasma also. So he received remdesivir, he received plasma, he received high antibiotics, he received steroids, and all the time we were really worried because he had past history of angioplasty and he had past history of old pulmonary TB. Luckily, with remdesivir high steroids, he started improving, subsequently shifted to wards. After 3 months, we repeated his scan. The scan, the initial score was almost 22 when he was admitted. Now the score is 12. So there is improvement. We started him on pulmonary rehabilitation. And after doing everything, when we gave him fitness certificate, again his question was, should I wear mask? So I said, yes, sir, you should be wearing mask because you have received lots of steroids and you have got past history of TB. So definitely there are chances of some other infection or reactivation. So you should be wearing mask continuously. Uh, like I said, uh, with anticoagulants, there is always chance of bleeding. So this case, a 40-year-old male admitted in ward on oxygen, otherwise normal, received 5 days of remdesivir. But after that, he started having hemoptysis. Now, I have explained to you about the pathophysiology. One of the problem is thromboembolism. And how do we find out about it? By doing D dimer. So if D dimer is high, that means high chances of thromboembolism, and we have to give them anticoagulation. Now this patient, his D dimer was high, the other inflammatory markers were high, so definitely he needed anticoagulation, but he presented with blood tinged sputum. Now the problem was whether to stop anticoagulation or continue. So obviously, for first day of his hemoptysis, we stopped his anticoagulation and we went ahead with investigation. Now, what could be the cause of hemoptysis in this case? The first thing in India, I will try to find out whether this patient has got some past history of tuberculosis because of which there may be cavity that can give rise to hemoptysis, or cavity with fungal ball that can give rise to hemoptysis. Second thing, whether this 40-year-old, now whether this patient has got hypertension. I'm giving steroids going to cause water retention, steroid going to increase blood pressure, and because of that hypertension, whether this patient is having BTS or hemoptysis. Third thing, thromboembolism is common. The minute patient is having bleeding for anywhere, I'm stopping anticoagulation. But my dilemma is pulmonary embolism also can give rise to BTS. What are the clinical manifestations of pulmonary thromboembolism? It, it can present as chest pain, it can present as cough, it can present as bit of breathlessness, but commonest thing is also we have seen blood thin sputum. So when actually patient presents with hemoptysis, whether I should be stopping anticoagulation or actually I should be continue. That means I need to find out the cause really fast so that I know whether to continue anticoagulation or whether to stop anticoagulation. So in this particular case, we went ahead with CT thorax. At the same time, to rule out thromboembolism, we went ahead with CTPA, that is CT pulmonary angiography also. So morning he had BTS, by evening, and we could do this because it was tertiary care center and we had all the facilities. Otherwise, it would have been difficult. So luckily, HRCT showed score of 15, the COVID-like picture, but there was no cavity. CTPA was normal. So most probably whatever anticoagulation we were giving that was causing bit of problem, simultaneously we already were doing PT-INR monitoring. We reduced the dose of anticoagulation and restarted it, and we could control the patient bleeding. But like I said, this was the tricky thing. When patient presents with something like this, which could be manifestation of thromboembolism for which you have to actually give anticoagulation, or it could be because of something else where anticoagulation may be contraindicated. So what actually you are supposed to do is, provided you are lucky enough to have facilities, investigate the patient, find out the cause, and accordingly go ahead. So this was the last case. if we have time, then I'll discuss this case. I just kept depending on timing this last case. So you tell me, or we'll stop. And if you have got any questions, we'll discuss that. Manjusha, do we have time, or I should stop?
Ma'am, the next session we are planning at 11:35, ma'am.
So maybe okay. I'll just finish
And
this one.
you have few questions also, ma'am.
Yeah. So I'll just finish. Another common problem we have faced during our this thing is chronic renal failure with COVID, which is common. So I had this case, and routinely these were the cases where we couldn't give this antivirals because of dialysis. Even anticoagulation was given with discussion with nephrologist. So what actually I wanted to why I wanted to discuss these cases, uh, like many multi-systemic things, COVID is also a multi-systemic problem, and we need multidisciplinary team or discussion to manage the patient. Thank you. Yeah. Any questions?
The participants can ask the questions. Okay, ma'am, there are few questions in the chat box.
Okay, how do I access? Just one sec.
I'll read for you, ma'am, otherwise.
Okay, no issues.
The first question, what is the rationale for ivermectin use?
Frankly, as far as COVID patients, RT-PCR positive patients are concerned, we haven't used ivermectin. But like I said, during COVID pandemic, uh, we didn't have proper randomized, controlled trials. So as of now, I'm not using it because I don't have enough evidence. But many of my colleagues working peripherally, they are claiming that doxy and ivermectin works. We are using it where we are having COVID suspect, strong suspect. But as far as COVID patients are concerned, we are not using it. And frankly, at this point of time, I don't have evidence for use of ivermectin.
Okay, ma'am. The next question is about whether the damage with lung is completely recoverable after COVID infection.
Really, I can't hear the next question. What is the next question? Or is it over?
Ma'am, just a minute.
Hello.
Hello?
Hello, ma'am. Good morning. Ayush, meanwhile, can I ask the question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Ayush. Ma'am, good morning. This is Asavari. Thank you, ma'am, for
Yeah,
a
thank
wonderful
you.
talk. And they were all practical and, should to say, the first-hand information regarding the drug-induced ADRs, actually, what you have seen in Bharati Hospital. And actually, ma'am, there are multiple questions, but then, anyways, I wouldn't like to take much time of yours. Ma'am, due to again connectivity, I couldn't listen unfortunately to your entire lecture, but couple of questions from my side. And Fabiflu 400 mg is actually according to whatever the available literatures what we have.
What?
I just
It
heard you
is
saying.
no. It the dose is 800 milligram BD. Okay, but outside it was
BD,
start.
BD. Huh.
Hello, can
Yes,
you hear
ma'am.
me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
I can.
yeah.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
dose
I can.
is
Yes, ma'am.
1800 milligram stat followed by 800
Huh.
milligram BD. Okay,
Hmm.
outside it was started as 400 milligram BD. Now problem was
Hmm.
we wanted to
Hmm.
increase the dose. The moment
Yes, ma'am.
we increased the dose, she
Hmm.
started getting side effects.
Hmm.
Now the dilemma is either I should be stopping it,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
I can't give half the dose.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
So ideally I should be stopping it or I should be giving it full. Now
Yeah.
explaining to the patient is bit difficult because for that patient, whatever dose she was receiving, she was okay with it,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? But if I
Yes, ma'am.
give that half dose, it is not proper. But luckily, we could explain
Hmm.
to the patient that this is the dose needed on
Hmm.
which you are having ADR. So better we stop because anyway you are having mild disease.
Okay.
So we can do without Fabiflu.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So without, and ma'am, what about the regimens of these? How many days you actually continued with this heavy dose with such
Fabiflu.
patients? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, actually it is 14 days, but frankly, we
Haha.
haven't used
We
Fabiflu in
cannot
any
continue.
patient
Yeah.
from our side. Whatever
Yes, ma'am. Huh.
patients
Huh.
we continued, already they were started from outside
Huh.
because we discussed with our infectious disease specialist,
Okay.
and frankly, we never started Fabiflu in any of our patients.
Okay, ma'am. And the same thing goes with HCQ also, ma'am, in your experience?
I can't hear you.
Hydrochloroquine, that also same experience it
Yeah,
goes with you?
regarding hydrochloroquine,
Uh-huh.
initially, first 2 months, I mean, it all started in March. So,
Yes, ma'am.
April, May, we use hydroxychloroquine even in diagnosed cases of COVID. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Hmm.
But subsequently, WHO stopped the use of hydroxychloroquine.
Yes.
So, we also stopped the using it in COVID positive patients. But
Hmm. Hmm.
the Indian guideline was there for caretaker of COVID positive patients,
Ha, ha,
especially
ha.
the
For
home isolated
prophylaxis.
patients.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
we continued that use.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the prophylaxis in healthcare personnel. That
Hmm.
guideline
Yes, ma'am.
still continued.
Hmm.
So we continued with that. But
With
otherwise,
only
as per
prophylaxis purpose and not for
yes,
the
not
therapeutic one,
no.
because
Only
we have come across a lot of cases of severe ADRs, cardiac ADRs in Indian patients, even with
exactly.
that.
Because
So,
problem was
hmm,
like
hmm,
you must have seen whatever 3-4 cases. See, frankly, we haven't seen many children coming with COVID problems. Okay,
right,
most
ma'am, right,
probably they got infection but
yeah,
got away with it.
yes,
And
ma'am,
all the adults, either there were a past history of hypertension, diabetes, or newly diagnosed hypertension, diabetes. So
hmm,
cardiac problems were common.
yes,
And
ma'am,
then giving hydroxychloroquine
hmm.
was like adding
Exacerbating the effects of it.
exactly.
Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yeah,
So
true.
we just use for first 1-2 months. After that we stop using.
You have stopped it. Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Can I leave, Dr. Asari?
No, ma'am, I think there are some questions. Ayush,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I think one or two questions we can answer. There are many questions.
okay.
Then
So
can we,
one
Manjusha, can we discuss those questions in the afternoon session?
that
Because I
also
think,
fine, ma'am. I
huh?
think you are
Because,
continuing.
yeah,
What we will
right,
do,
right.
we will note
Huh?
it down all the questions from the chat
Yeah,
box,
yeah.
and
We'll
we will do
discuss
the
in the
detailed.
afternoon.
Yeah, afternoon.
Yeah, thank you. Can I leave, Manjusha?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank
Yeah,
you
yeah.
so much,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for accepting our invitation.
Yeah, thank you.